None of you have had 70 kilometers of my help this week yet.
We have not.
Hey folks, how are we doing? What are we drinking tonight?
Well, tonight I had an interview with one of the Zwift teams called Team Italy, so I thought I'd have some Chianti.
Come on to Crown and Ginger.
I'm not even going to pretend I know what that is. Vodka tonic.
Really hoping that's some kind of fine Canadian drink that our three listeners from Canada will really enjoy you referencing there, Craig.
Oh, who was the third? I thought we just had two.
I think one's Craig of those three listeners, and the other two are his children, or certainly devices that belong to his children, if the stream is anything to go on. Oh, James, what have you done to us this week? What have you done to us this week?
I've given you beautiful things.
Tell us about your beautiful ride.
I've given you 6 beautiful things because this week the Herd Summer Racing League route is a little bit brutal. It's Bigfoot Hills, which is approximately 70 kilometers in length and around 700 meters of climbing. After a quick time trial in Bologna, this is the first of our points events. The riders can score up to 50 points for the fastest time on each of the 6 classified segments. We have the 500-meter the sprint at the start of the desert during the lead-in. Got Titans Grove forwards, Hillycombe forwards, Volcano KOM, Titans Grove forwards, reverse, and Hillycombe reverse as well, before we get to the finish line at approximately 70.5 kilometers. It's fun. I've tried it.
What you haven't seen, because obviously we're a podcast, but we can see each other on the Zoom calls, is that I have shook my head in shame for the whole of that chat from James, and Becca has had to put her glasses on because her eyes were rolling so much. Becca, you've decided to skip this one this week, haven't you?
Yeah, I think so. It's a terrible route, to be honest, and I have other things to do tomorrow that seem far more appealing than doing 70 kilometers on Zwift, like 70 kilometers outdoors. Sorry, James.
That's okay.
It is
out
brutal.
All the fun.
It is brutal, isn't it? I think, where should we kick off on this? As you said, it's that, for me, where I got shelled in ZRL when they did this route and in ZRL season 1, except they did a custom length route. So we finished at the top of the Titans reverse KOM. So it was about 55 Ks and didn't have stupid, my least favorite climb in all of the Zwift world, Hillycombe reverse. That's a podcast in its own. So we finished top of the the Titans Grove reverse. I got shelled on the sprint, like out of the desert, and there wasn't even prime. The pack just went stupid fast. Heard some Racing League, there were primes. So James, explain the primes to us.
So the primes are basically your fastest time in the segment. So let's say, for example, you're on Hillycombe forwards and you finish, you have a second fastest time on that climb. You would score 49 points for the winner scoring 50. So basically we have 6 different segments and you can score up to 50 points on each of those, depending on the other times that your competition in the same category sets.
Cool. And Craig, we're going to come to you later on this, but you've got a particular tip this week in 60 seconds, and a new segment we're trialing for all of our 5 listeners with a tip for what they can do on herd races. But for me, the killer on this route is that 500-meter sprint. It's going to take somewhere between 35 to 50 seconds for most of us humans to complete. It's a long old sprint, and it's about 1.6 Ks in. It's quite soon. It's in that first kilometre or two, and we all know that Zwift races start stupidly quickly because people on Zwift are stupid and get excited by pixels. And yeah, it's just a killer. I think the previous time I've done this route in a prime-based race, did we do it in HSRL last year or something similar? Maybe we finished at the top.
I think we did a couple of laps of TikTok.
No, maybe that was it. I remember one of my early races in B, I got shelled in the sprint and spent the rest of the ride on my own going, this is stupid, I hate Zwift, I hate James Bailey, I hate the bees, what even is a bike, why do I have shoes on? Yeah, many questionable life choices. But yeah, so we've got that sprint, which is hard and long. We then come to Titans Reverse, which is actually, although it's a com, I think it's one for the rouleurs. I think it's one for the strong riders, the people who've got watts. It's not that steep, is it?
Titans Reverse.
Sorry, Titans, the first climb.
Oh, right, okay. I think it peaks at 6%, but the first probably kilometre is rolling before you actually reach the hillier bit, which is but generally probably 2 to 3 minutes at 4 to 6%.
Yeah, so Zwift Insider gives Titans Grove as 2.6 kilometres long, 2.2% average gradient. My experience of this, it's one to be in a bunch. Like, there's not, it is so much quicker if you're in a group.
Yeah, absolutely.
Craig, you're nodding and you've been silent. So Craig, jump in here. How are you? Look, we've got as far as Titans Grove, but how are you starting this ride tomorrow when you race it? What are you worried about?
So what I'm worried about is actually the hilly forward. So I'm pretty sure I can get with the group over Titans KOM forward, and then but I think the key for a lot of people is going to be getting over hilly with the main group, because the Volcano KOM, the next one up, is so draftable. If you're not with the group, you're giving up a lot of time.
See, that's fascinating. So I'm the other way around with that. I don't worry about hilly forwards, because we all know how you ride hilly forwards is you get a feather and you attack James on the hairpin bend, because that's the only way I've ever ridden it. Recovery ride, race, it doesn't matter. Whenever I've ridden that with James Bailey, I feather attacked him on that first corner.
I'm with Craig, to be honest. I think Titans forward is crucial, especially with the rollers before it even starts, because you can quite easily lose touch on those. Definitely push really hard on Titans forwards. Hilly is going to be harder to stay together just because it's so much steeper.
Yeah, I think so. So let's talk Titans Grove then. You've got that small climb out of the desert, which is where the group will start to string out, and I think you need to put some watts in there to be further forward in the group. There will be a gap made, and I will be caught out by that because I'm dopey. As you say, there are some rollers before you hit the comm line, so it is one of those climbs where you've got to be alert and kind of paying attention. And again, if I haven't been dropped on that climb out the desert, I'm almost certainly being shelled on those rollers. And then when you get into the climb, it's pretty much a stay in your bunch, do your thing. Like you say, it gets a bit steeper at the top. I think you've got to watch out on the rollers on the way down as well. There's probably a potential there's a few rollers on the way out of Titans, isn't there, as we come back around to the hilly. When we hit the hilly, what are we thinking on that one? I mean, you tend to time trial it, don't you, James? I've mixed up my style on this. I've gone between going really, really hard on the steep bit at the start and then sort of trying to hang on to the top and time trialing it. To be honest, I again, because I'm dopey and get caught out, I think it's carrying speed in the first turn as you come into the hilly comm to the bridge, which is before the comm line. But making sure you got the speed, you're in the bunch there, really helps.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely crucial to be inside the bunch when you hit the hill. If you're back wheel, you're there's a really good chance of getting detached. And with the climb as it is, basically you've got your 2 hairpins and then 1 right angle turn to the right before the banner. If you can do the first 2 turns as hard as you possibly can, you've got a little bit of respite on the last bit. So it's just a case of working out what can you hold for 90 seconds and just pushing out as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, so I gave a rough time for the sprint. I think that's somewhere between 35 and 50 seconds. The kind of your sharp C's are probably doing Titans in around 5 minutes, I'd have said. B's going to be a bit quicker. D's probably a bit slower. Hilly, again, sharp C's, you're getting close to 2 minutes. I think the really top C's, the good B's will be doing it just sub 2 minutes. I've no idea with Volcano. I did watch somebody kick the shit out of another rider, metaphorically, all the way up Volcano and all the way back down again. And she's in this call. So Becca, talk to us about Volcano. I've genuinely no idea how to ride this climb. I hate it.
I don't think if I was going to do the volcano again, I would ride it how I did in that ride, to be honest, because at the end of that, like whatever it was, 14-kilometer race, I threw up and lay on the floor for half an hour. And halfway through a 70-kilometer race, that might not be the best tactic to go through. Having said this though, I forgot that we did this for ZRL, and this was actually the first race that I genuinely enjoyed doing and I really liked. And now I'm reconsidering not doing this tomorrow.
It's a really cool route as far as Titans Grove reverse finishing there is concerned. Yeah, we rode it as a recon before the ZRL, and it's a cool route. So stupid James Bailey, good route choice, well done. Begrudgingly.
To be fair, by the time you've done Titans Grove reverse, you've done 55k. All you're really going to be doing is going downhill and flat to the final climb, which is the easiest one of the whole lot.
It isn't, and I hate it, and we'll come to that in a minute. So Volcano, Craig, you said earlier, Volcano is so draftable. It's about 4 kilometers. It's a touch over 3% average gradient. Why do you think it's really draftable?
Because when I followed Becca when we did it in ZRL, when we did the 3 laps of Whole Lot of Lava, I was a lot faster than I could have done it solo. We had a pretty good group that got up to the top together, and yeah, I was sub 7 minutes. So I'm thinking in the middle of this race, I'd be very happy to hit 7:30-ish, but I think I saw on the race earlier, the top B's time was just over 7 minutes.
Wow.
So we did this for funsies, didn't we? You, Bowser, and I, James, once.
We
rode out at about 2 watts per kilogram, and you and I held nearly
basically
all
we
the way
beat
to
the living shit out of each other.
8 minutes.
Yeah,
we did.
we basically kept on trying to hit each other with our pixels, and I think we were 802, 803, and 806.
And that was pretty much bang on 4 watts per kilogram we did up there, but that was only 2 of us in a bunch. So
yeah.
I'm with Craig here. There's actually quite a lot of flat bits in this. You go through the volcano, it's flat. You've got the kind of rope bridge things which flatten out a bit. I think that's where people lose time, to be honest, is you forget to change it. Like this is Dopey Rider 101, so I'll do this tomorrow. People forget to change gear, up their cadence, whatever you do to keep those watts up in those flatter sections.
I think going back to Craig's point about it being a very draftable climb, but because the average gradient is only what I think you said 3.2, most of the climbing sections are no more than 5%, apart from the very last sort of 300 meters. Generally, pace is going to be at or above 20 kph, which is absolutely fine for drafting. So if you look at your solo times around Volcano, or times that you, I, and Bowser did, you could probably easily knock 20-30 seconds off that by being in a bunch. I went around yesterday in like 8:15 at about 4 watts a kilo, and I'd expect in a bunch that to be probably 7:45, if not slightly quicker.
Yeah, it's definitely one I think to watch on the draft one. So Volcano Descent can be a tricky one though, can't it? So Craig, you're probably heavy enough that you can super tuck the whole way down. I struggle to super tuck portions of the com descent because I'm not heavy enough. James, you're now pretty much the same weight as me, so you might struggle to super tuck.
I don't super tuck down there, and I think the only way you would do is if you are in a decent sized group, because then you'd have enough pace to do so. But if you're soloing down at sub 70 kilos, I don't think you're going to do it at all. And unless Becca, were you able to super tuck at all down Volcano?
Only after sprinting to get up.
Yeah, you did about 8 watts per kilo or super tucked, and I'm not doing that because fundamentally I'm lazy. This is where, so in ZRL, Gav dropped me because he stayed in a bunch and was tucking and I wasn't able to. So I think I should have just pedaled the whole way down. So that brings us to Titans Grove Reverse, which I think is a criminally underused climb in Watopia.
Agreed.
It's not really accessible through a lot of the routes, is it? So it's quite hard to get to. people don't really do, is it TikTok's not really used to reverse much. I've not seen that used, but it's a really fun climb.
I think it's
got the little rollers at the start.
I think it's actually comparable to hilly forwards. The distance is pretty similar, but gradient isn't massively out. I think tight traverse is probably around 7-8%, and at around sort of 4 to 5 watts a kilo, you're looking at around about 2 minutes, which is pretty much the same sort of time you'd be looking at for hilly forwards as well. It would be a perfect place to finish a race.
So it's a touch steeper, according to the Zwift Insider thing. It's 6.6, but bang on the same distance. The tip I can remember, so you all spot on the right-hand side the turn off for the, what's the route called that you can mountain bike down with the steering? Anyway, there's the turn off on the mountain bike track. Those of us that know Watopia well, one of those dirt tracks off to the right, that's the point where you know your sprint on this one. And you just go for it from there. So it's one of those ones that's got quite a nice marker. The beauty of this one is you can actually super tack on the way down and have a bit of a chill out. With it, as you say, it's mostly then downhill, and then we hit Steve's nemesis. I absolutely hate hilly reverse. Like the Zwift reverses, I just hate it. I love I think it's 2 bridges where you do a bit of it and then turn left. But for me, it's those stupid rollers at the top. I can do the steep bit, and then you turn right and go over the bridge, and then you hit some stupid rollers, and it's just stupid, and I don't like it. It smells. It's a silly climb. Why do we bother? Just finish at the top of Titans Grove reverse. What are our tips for riding this climb well?
Go
for me, it is absolutely hammer the first part.
Yeah.
Basically from the start of the time segment to the new bypass, that just treat that as a sprint, and then go to FTP from there.
Yeah, I'd say, I think exactly. I mean, I was even going to say, like, after you've done that bit, just hold FTP. So you'd be looking at probably trying to do about 120, 130% on the actual climby bit of it, which I think peaks around about 12, 13%. And going around that corner is pretty brutal, especially on your 5th climb of the day. But once you got over there, there's a lot of respite. You've got downhill bits and then some rollers, and you just want to try and hold FTP to the line.
I guess when I said hammer, I meant more twice FTP.
Fair enough.
It's definitely twice FTP.
And I'm not looking, as James said, this is 5th. I mean, to be fair, I'll have done about 1.5 watts per kilo on my own, chatting to people on Discord in between these comps, so I'll probably be able to do it. But yeah, anyone in the bunch who's listened to our advice and ridden properly will probably be regretting trying to do twice.
I think, like you say, Steve, a lot of it is going to depend on what you've been doing in between the hills. I mean, if you've been like riding at, call it 95 to 100% FTP most of the route, okay, realistically, that's not going to happen. But depends how tired you are when you hit the 5th hill, because if you're hitting that 5th hill and you've got an FTP of 4 and your average over a route is 3.6, 3.7, you're not, well, unless you're Becca, maybe Craig, you're probably going to struggle to do 150 to 200% FTP up that first part of the hill. When I tried doing it yesterday, that was the one hill that broke me. I was holding around about 350 with an FTP of, call it 270. And by the time I got over the corner, I was just destroyed.
It really
I think your analogy earlier, James, of how Titans reverse is pretty similar to hilly forwards. Actually, Zwift is pretty similar to Titans. So Titans is quite a long climb. And I think I always approached the hilly reverse thinking it's that short climb, it's just a corner. It's a bit like hilly forwards, and actually it's 2.5 kilometers long. So there's quite a lot of it after that bit that's steep. But it is flat and rollery. Then right, downhill into the finish, back to the marina start pens, back towards that standard Watopia finish line, get to the last few 100 meters, hammer it at. Craig, you're shaking your head. Am I not going back to the marina? Where do we finish in this? Back to the desert, are we?
Yep. back to the desert. You finish on the desert sprint, which is not classified, but you will score points based on your finishing position.
Okay, so you're not going for fastest time, but position does count. So yeah, downhill, turn right at the bottom of the hill, back into the desert, wiggle around the corners, hit the desert sprint, get to the last few hundred meters, drop the watt bombs, or as Claire did in our team time trial this week for the Quackers, casually just hit 11, 12 watts per kilogram for the last 500 meters. So yeah, easy. I think there's a key tactic here, isn't it? And let's give our Canadian semi-competent friend 60 seconds to talk tactics. Craig, what's your tip this week for how we race HRSL? God, I can't say this league well.
So really, this is the default strategy for HSRL. So just starting from the point structure, 1/3 finish, 2/3 prime. One position on every prime is worth twice as much as one position to finish, or one position better in half the primes is the same as one position at the finish. So my default strategy comes down to a three-letter acronym, HTP, hammer the primes. There's so many points available, it's not worth giving up on a prime for finishing order. And if you go back and look at previous seasons, the higher finishing riders sometimes end up mid-table if they didn't go fast on the primes. And riders that were dead last in finishing order can sometimes end up mid-table. But every rule has exceptions, and there are many. This week probably is one, as you might not want to completely hammer the primes if you need to not to just survive the race. On other weeks, you might not go hard on a sprint in order to save energy for a climb, or vice versa, depending on what you're strong on. But that's it.
I think
Hammer primes.
Just looking at tonight's race, so the guy that had the fastest time across the route, a guy called Ken Allen in B, he only came third in his category. So Mark John and Chris Overden were able to HTP, hammer the primes, in order to score more points for them, because he was obviously focusing on winning the race rather than setting the times on the primes.
Yeah, I've definitely caught up with this. So I remember racing one of the New York ones and having a really good race for GC with Lois when we were in the Seas. I think Craig stomped off the front and won everything. Lois and I think, raced for bronze or silver in the end, and sprinted for that. But we ended up I think I finished 4th overall and she finished 9th. And the only reason I finished 4th is because I'd caught the B train on one of the descents and done the sprint through one of the sprint primes with them, and Lois hadn't, and that had helped me catch up to her to have the sprint at the finish. So as Craig says, there's a real points bias to doing really well on the primes. We saw some of this tonight. I was following the Facebook chat we got, as some of you were watching Mike Bowser and Shifty and Co racing in race 1. Bowser was actually waiting for groups, wasn't he? For exactly this reason, because it was better to be in a draft for the primes to set those fast times. I'm saying that to one of the people that watched tonight. I didn't watch. Is that statement true?
Yes. So the one spot he did that is right before the Volcano KOM. So he was with a group of Ds at that point, because he'd gotten dropped on the hilly forward KOM from the lead group of about 14 Bs. So he actually dropped back from the group of Ds he was riding with at that point, and waited for the second group of Bs that actually was mixed in with the lead group of As at that point. So just so he would have somebody trying to go the same speed he is to go up the volcano with. And he didn't want to start behind them, have them catch up, and then draft with them, because then they're going to get a faster time than him.
I think that's another thing we've hit on. I would recommend to people is it's a multi-cat race. So always be looking out to who is the faster rider you can catch a lift with. So if you're a D, the Cs will probably catch you up. Can you hitch on the C train, sit on their wheels for a bit, and that will help you get a fast time through a segment. So can you, if the Seas catch you up on the volcano, really stick to one of their wheels, get a really fast time up the volcano column, knowing that the primes are really valuable. So it helps you, and you might actually sacrifice a bit of GC, lose on that, but because you've drafted with some of the riders in the higher category, it will get you a faster time. You'll do better in the primes. So there is value in trying to wait for a group to do a segment with them.
How am I supposed to get faster time?
You are the faster time, Becca. You are the faster time. What are you going to do? What's your PB on Volcano? About 3 seconds, 6 minutes, something?
6:08.
Blimey. So that is pretty much 2 minutes quicker than mine. There we go. I mean, and I'm a just B compared to an A. That's bonkers.
It was a very intense race, and it was a very short race, to be fair. I couldn't repeat that when we did ZRL the week after. I couldn't get past 6:30.
Still 90 seconds quicker that you could get, but there we go. Cool. Let's move on from this week's race. Next week we want to try and chat to some. We like featuring different riders when we do the stream, don't we? And Gavin suggested to us. Gavin Ions suggested that we do a little interview with somebody from the herd each week. We're going to try and do that next week. I'm just going to highlight a segment now, which I'll call Stupid Herd. So this is people I've heard of in the herd that are stupid. This week it's got to go to Ben Poynton for doing a metric
Double.
century round volcano.
Oh no, it was more than that. Metric century round volcano is 25 laps. He did 35, and then
the imperial century, not the metric century round volcano. Get it right. And then he led a ride in the herd group that evening, didn't he? As well, another 40 Ks.
Yeah, he wanted to get to 200 kilometers.
I mean, of all the things I could sit on my ass doing for that amount of time, Zwift is not even in the top 10. I'm sorry, but yeah, great work, stupid Ben. Right, let's go to what's annoyed us this week. Becca, what's annoyed you this week in the world of Zwift?
I honestly have no complaints about Zwift this week. After going outside, I'm glad Zwift doesn't have potholes and cars and wind. So I am very pro Zwift today. What about everyone else?
I think my only thing about Zwift that annoyed me was my training plan, which just gave me enormous amounts of fatigue. So I gave up on it and I did a recce route of Bigfoot Hills instead, which was actually really enjoyable. So actually Zwift made me happy.
I think that ties in nicely with my annoyance this week is with the people of Zwift, which was probably my annoyance last week, but it's just a game, folks. It's just a game that if we play a lot, we might live a bit longer because, you know, it might make us a bit fitter. But there's some people on forums and not people from the herd, but there's some people on forums who are getting very upset with people who are either volunteers or are not paid a huge amount, that they're not organising things the way they want them to.
It's almost like you're referring to something that sounds a bit like Whiff away from Weeg.
Yeah, we won't use the exact name, but yeah, it's just a game, folks. Like, I'm sorry, it is fun and it is nice winning, and we do play games to win, and I get all those. And this ties into my second thing is I think training plans, like I think this is what you found, James, like the reason we play games is they're fun. And the reason we play games like Zwift is because they're social fun as well. And training plans do get a bit boring and they kind of lose the sociability of it. So if you're able to do a training plan, just be aware they can get a bit boring. We like the workout. Most people I speak to on Zwift like the social element. They like the workout. They like the racing against their friends every week. So if you're doing a training plan, look at what you can do. Like think about what it is that enjoys you, that brings you back on the bike every week, and see if you can fit that in. Craig.
So the one I was going to do, you jumped right all over, which was the huge amount of outroar over recategorization in Zwift Racing League. But I've got another one too, and that's people that can't just play the game and have to go and see what they can do to cheat and not be detected. I think I caught somebody, if not red-handed, a little bit orange on my live stream for Zwift Racing League. So hopefully that gets stopped and just ride.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. What I don't mind is, so controversially, I don't mind people looking for exploits, in-game exploits that help them do better. So it, like we saw in Zwift Racing League, and we've seen some of the Herd Racing League events, like OTR turned up to an event in the Herd Racing League and they just made it really tough because they put people in there and they said, we're going to ride really hard at the front of this race, make it really, really tough to try and drop some of the other riders. And we'll drop some of our riders doing it. It means our main folks will challenge for the win. That's a bit like bike racing. Like that's what happens. That's what happens if like De Koenig get on the front of a ride and they make it really, really hard because they're the wolf pack and they want to make it really, really hard. I don't mind that. But when you're just cheating, like you're just cheating the system. Like, and I think the kind of midpoint, which we can discuss another time, is where, let's say, people massage their effort to make sure they stay within category, but that's for another time. I want to finish on a high though. I want to finish on a high, so I want to do big shout outs to both Craig and I think it's Claire who's done this on the women's side. We've mentioned ZRL a few times. In the herd we've got over 500 riders racing in the ZRL, which is really cool, and they've all been organized by two people, which is Craig and Claire, and then a load of captains have taken that work on. We've got more than 60 teams, which by my maths means that we've got more than 60 people who are captaining every week. That basically means I can turn up on a Tuesday and do a fun racing league without having to really think about it. And it means about 500 other people can as well. So that's really cool. Well done, those folks.
On another note, Steve, I'd like to know what you think about pigeons.
I think if we were racing up Innsbruck and were slightly tiddled again, and a rider had their name begin with a P, they would now be the pigeon. But I think we peaked with the anaconda, and I think that's where we should leave the animal chat.
I don't think we'll ever improve on anaconda.
Becca's eyes are falling out; they are rolling so much at this point, and I think on that health and safety note, we should probably call it a night. Thanks, folks. It's been fun.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, Matt.